All right. So hello, everybody. My name is Jillian Nelson. This is my 9th grade capstone, and it's on gender equality in NASA. My progress in my project. I have 65 hours roughly in my project so far because there's still a few things that I have to finish. And my driving question is, how has gender equality affected NASA's past, present, and how is it going to affect their future? Now, a little bit about NASA before I get into gender equality. Jim Bridenstine is the administrator at NASA right now. James Morhard is their deputy administrator. And Dwight D. Eisenhower is their founder. I figured I would start my project off with my favorite quote that I found while researching my topic, and it was by Johnson Fries, and it was, "More women equal more attention to solving problems and maintaining the sustainability of space environment." So that was just something really cool that stuck out to me that kind of glows on my topic a little bit. Now, going into one of my favorite parts is NASA women, or like some important people that I found while researching. So my first person was Anna McClain, and she had just amazing stories and crazy things in her background, but here are some things about her. Annie McClain is a 41-year-old born and raised in Spokane, Washington, with an incredible past and many stories to tell. One of my favorites being she and Christina Koch were supposed to go on the first all-female spacewalk on the ISS, but due to suit malfunction, Annie McClain wasn't able to go because they didn't have 2 medium-sized spacesuits aboard with her. So instead, Nick Hugh took her spot with Christina Koch, and on March 29th did the spacewalk on the ISS to restore the solar panels. She also played rugby, which was just something fun that I figured I had to throw in. She also has over 2,000 flight hours in 20 different aircrafts. So that was just also something really cool that I had to bring up. Next up is Renee Wynn, and she was the former chief executive officer at NASA, and she was just great, and people only had great things to say about her. She retired in April of 2020, and she came to NASA from the Environmental Protection Agency, where she had served as the acting assistant administrator for the Office of Environmental Information since July in 2013. Valentina, I don't want to totally botch her last name. Tereshkova, thank you. Now, she was the first and youngest woman to have flown in space on a solo mission. She was the first woman ever in space. She rode on Vostok 6 on June 16th, 1963, and she orbited Earth 48 times. So she was just an absolutely amazing person and was really interested in space and how everything worked. She was also a Russian mathematician, so that was just something else fun that I found out about her. Now, Aline Collins was a former military instructor and test pilot before NASA. She was the first female pilot and the first female commander of a space shuttle. So that was also just really cool about her. She, in 1995, commanded or piloted the STS-63. And then its purpose was to conduct flight communication and astrobiology tests. So that was kind of that purpose of that mission. Hidden Figures. This has a lot behind it and a lot of information that I needed to fit into it, but this is kind of what I learned. Now, I know that a lot of you have heard about these three, which are Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Dorothy Bow. They were like the main picture of Hidden Figures from the book and the movie because they were like this power trio when it came to like early NASA days when women were actually allowed to be in NASA. Now, there are some interesting things that don't just revolve around them because Hidden Figures was like not just them, but it was like this whole group of hidden women that were kind of forced into the shadows because of the times that they were part of the administration. So in 1935, hundreds of women were hired as computers. They literally called them human computers and have a definition for human computers, which was someone who performed mathematical equations by hand. So a lot of women went into the field of, it was NACA at the time, and were kind of pushed behind the scenes to do all of the big work that needed to be done and all of like the mathematical part of it. During World War II, Langley began recruiting African American women with college degrees to work as human computers. So that was one of the big things that like started this whole hidden part of NASA, was hiring African American women with college degrees to kind of come in and do this mathematical part that a lot of them couldn't do. However, segregation policies kind of forbid these women to be in the same part as, or like the same building as the male astronauts and the, this whole other part. So they were put into a separate section called the West Area Computers. So they had their own like building that they all went to figure all this out. And then as years passed and the center evolved, the West computers became engineers and electronic computer programmers. And the women, quite a few women, were the first Black managers at Langley. And it was their work that put John Glenn, the first American, into orbit in 1962. So their work is kind of what made that possible. Now, underrepresentation of women. So for this one, I was very interested in this part of my topic because there was just a lot that this was like the main reason for me starting my project, I guess. So as you can see here, this is my bar graph that I made to explain like workforce percentages in NASA and seeing how different they are. So to start off, 17,000 people work in NASA's workforce, and roughly 5,000 of them are women. So that kind of sheds a light to start this. 28% of leadership executive positions are women. 16% are senior scientific employees, so like the people that go into more of the science part, not the electronic or forgetting the other word I was going to use, so botch that. But yes, and 11.5% of NASA's astronauts are women, meaning out of roughly 566 astronauts, there's 65 women. 20% of their engineers are women, 18.2% are computer scientists, and 20% are part of the professional computing workforce. So there's just a big gap between women workers and men workers. Whether that's because, NASA started out as only men, so women are just, starting to come up, or whether that is because of how many women actually want to go into there. There's a lot of things that go into that, but those are the percentages. Now, the first all-female spacewalk. This was done by Christina Koch and Jessica Meir, October 18th in 2019. So very recently, not very recently, but recently enough. This happened on the ISS, and it was to change a battery charge discharge unit. So they went out and they restored and repaired that, and it took them 7 hours and 17 minutes. This was a very big step for women in NASA, especially with everything that happened with Christina Koch and Anna McLean. This was just kind of a big deal all around and made a lot of people, especially women, really excited at this new big step for NASA. These are some of my sources. I have more to come. I just didn't get them all finished and in there. Thank you for listening. Any questions or comments?